Welcome to another video, and in this video I'm going to be doing the two-piece rotors on the S4. Right now the rotors that I have on the S4 right now are just your basic stop tack slotted rotors. So I'm going to be switching it out, just like I said before, with the two-piece rotors, and they're by the Giro disc. I'm not sure how you pronounce it correctly, but here they are. So this is the two-piece rotors for the fronts, and then these are the two-piece rotors for the rears. With the fronts, the two-piece rotors, these are fitted for the 18Z calipers. So I don't believe these will be a good fit if you have like the stock brake caliper setup, because I have the 18Zs up front, and these are specifically made for the 18Z setup. For the rears, I have the Boschmod rear brake kit, which requires the B8 S4 rears, which is a 330 millimeter rotors. So that's what these are for. So again, these are not the stock size for the regular B6 S4. At the end of the video, I'm actually going to do a comparison with the fronts, with what I have on the rotors on the front, and obviously with the rears, with the rotors I have for the rears. For the demonstration of this video, I'm only going to be doing the driver side. It's going to be exactly the same process on the passenger side. So first I'm going to go ahead and start on the front driver side. Go ahead, lift up the car, remove the wheels, and start removing the process to remove the rotors. Okay, lifted up the car a little bit, got the front wheel off. So now I'm go ahead and start removing the two Allen and the hex bolts that are holding on the calipers onto the frame right here. So for me, it is a 12 millimeter hex. I have the front calipers dismounted real quick. Since I do not have studs on this, I went ahead and just used two lug nuts. You're good with just one, but I just went ahead and used two, because if I don't have those lug nuts in, this will just fall, and I don't want that to happen. So I just have these lug nuts just to hold it in place. And now again, when it comes to holding the calipers off, just be careful. There's several ways on how to, once you have the calipers off, some people use like a wire and just hang it up from here. I just actually have the box and some carpet, whatever, foam, whatever this thing is called, just to hold it in place, and it's doing pretty good, because we don't want to create a lot of tension or torsion on the brake line itself. So that's since it's not doing that, I'm good to leave it just like that. So now I'm gonna go ahead, remove the front brakes, and then go ahead and do the comparison with the new brakes. And again, that will be towards the end of the video with the comparison. Before installing the rotors, I went ahead and put some anti-seize. I went a little bit over on the overkill on the anti-seize. I'm gonna go ahead and wipe off a little bit off, because I didn't realize how much was actually on the brush. So then also, before putting on the disc, wipe down since they are new, wipe down the disc with some brake clean, because there might be some residue left from the manufacturing process. So you don't want to have like that small little oils still left onto the rotors itself. With the brake clean, with the rag, go ahead and wipe that off. So now I'm gonna go ahead, put in the disc, and once the disc in, I'll go ahead and start putting in the hardware needed for if you have the 18Z. Again, this is what the hardware looks like if you have the 18Z calipers, and they're the same for top and bottom. And I'm gonna keep it the same. So these are my bottom, and these are my top portion right here. Also, as you can see how the pistons are pushing up against the brake pads. So I'm gonna go ahead and also compress the brake pads so they're all the way in, because those rotors are way thicker as the ones that were on here before. So I'm gonna go ahead and compress it on both sides so that the new brake pads can accommodate the rotors. All right, there's the rotor. So again, I held it on with two of the lug nuts. One thing to keep in mind, when working with anti-seize or any type of lubricant, you really want to be careful to keep your hands clean, or if you're wearing gloves, change them out with every step you do. So with one pair of gloves, I did the anti-seize, removed the gloves, and then with the other pair of gloves, I went ahead and compressed the the pistons in the calipers, took those gloves off, and then with another clean pair of gloves, I went ahead and installed the rotors. Because I do not want to not so much cross-contaminate, I don't know if that's the correct term, but I do not want to get any type of grease from the brake pads or anti-seize onto the disc rotor itself. So that's very important. You want to keep these, because that's the whole purpose of cleaning the brake rotors, you know, because I don't want to clean them again. So I already cleaned them the first go around before installing, so get any of the, you know, any oils left from manufacturing from the factory. So yes, so that is the brake pads. I'm very excited. So now I want to do pretty much the complete opposite now. So go ahead and install the hardware and with the calipers on, and then let's see how it looks. One thing I want to mention before going on, before you put everything back together, I actually should have checked this before I put everything on to make sure that the rotors rotate. So what happened is I put everything all back together, and the wheel wouldn't move. It was like as if something was stuck, if it was in gear or just something. So I couldn't figure it out. Then I eventually started looking around, and I noticed that it's because the front rotors are thicker. There's a clearance issues with two things. One was this part right here, and the other part were these little dowels or little things that stick out that's inside the caliper. So first what you have to do is grind, obviously remove the little and then grind down a little bit right here, so you just have enough clearance. So obviously I have the disc right there. And then as far as for the dowel, so if you do have your calipers spray painted or powder coated, whichever way, make sure you protect the paint. Go ahead and put some tape around it, because you definitely don't want to get scratched up. And I use this right here, kind of like a big old giant Dremel on steroids, to go ahead and grind down this part right here, because of this. So the outside part of the caliper is fine. There is clearance, but with the inside part right here, these little dowels right here, it was up against the inside part of the rotors. So another thing also I want to mention, so the hardware to connect the calipers onto the frame, so this also is kind of pretty close. So because, you know, again, these rotors are a little bit thicker, these inside part right here of the threads of the hardware were pretty close, too close for comfort, for my personal opinion. So what I'm going to do, so obviously this is what the hardware looks like. So you have the spacer, this little filler spacer that goes inside the caliper, and another spacer, and then the nut that goes on the inside, that faces like this. So what I'm going to do is, instead of grinding down the threads, I'm going to go ahead and put 2 more spacers on this end, so that this thread kind of sticks out just a little bit more to give clearance from the rotor. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and have 3 washers. It looked like it was clear with 2 spacer washers, but just to be on the safe side, I'm going to do 3. So it's going to be 3. Here's the caliper that goes right here, that little spacer, and then with 1 washer, only need 1 washer on the inside part of the caliper, and you'll still have enough threads to bolt the nut on. But yeah, so with 3 washers, it definitely gives you a lot more better clearance from hitting this part right here of the rotors. All right, there's the front 2-piece rotor. I'm loving the look. So when it comes to tightening the 2 bolts for the hardware, when you look online, there's going to be a lot of people saying a whole lot of different things. So I just went with 150 Newton meters with the torque wrench. Again, that might be overkill, or that might be not enough, but I'm fairly confident with just doing the 150. Again, does not mean you have to do that. If you know exactly for sure, by all means, comment down in the comment section below. But I'm sticking to 150 Newton meters. And yeah, I'm again, like, I love the look. I cannot wait to see it with the wheel back on. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the passenger side on the front. It's gonna be the same exact process. And then next I'll go ahead and move over to the rear passenger side and start filming that part. Now I have the rear wheel removed. So it's going to pretty much be the same process as the front. There's only one thing that's going to be a slightly different process. So obviously the same for the removing the brake caliper is going to be the same process pretty much. The only difference is going to be the parking brake. So right now the parking brake, the way that it is adjusted to the thickness of this rotor right now. And as before, again, I'll show in the comparison. With the rear rotors are a lot thicker. So since the rear rotors are a lot thicker, I'm gonna have to adjust the parking brake, obviously on both sides, and I'll go into detail once I get to that part. So just kind of like a little forewarning, the parking brake will have to be adjusted. So it'll be the one extra step that's going to be slightly different as compared to the when I was doing the front wheels. Real quick, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself real quick. So there's two things I need to mention. Should have mentioned this first, is the position of the rotors. So if you see how the slots start from here and it works its way this way, that is the correct way. Because the way, if you look down here, how the channels are, it is designed, it's engineered and designed for the airflow to be maximized when this thing is rotating forward, counterclockwise, for the heat to come out through right here. So that's how it's done. If you were to flip it the other way, then what's going to happen is you're going to have the heat pretty much going towards the airflow is going to be directed towards the center of the wheel hub, and you don't want that to happen. You want the heat to escape from outside, and then the heat coming in from here, escaping to the out. So that's the first thing. I should have mentioned that, is the positioning of the rotors do matter a lot. I really did notice this a lot with the front calipers. And the reason, because the front calipers, if you do remember, they're a lot more wider and girthier. So when I was going ahead and pushing down or compressing the pistons on the brake calipers, here I can go ahead and show you. You need to open up your brake line cap, and when you do that, because if you were to leave it closed, when you're trying to compress it, that pressure has to go somewhere, and the pressure has to come out through right here. So with that being said, since I was at the full line with compressing these ones, because again I did have to compress all 6 on this side and obviously all 6 on, so that total of 12 pistons on the front were compressed, and that means that fluid has to go somewhere. So I was pouring out here, so just keep in mind, keep a towel around here when you do the fronts. The rears, I don't think it's going to be a huge problem, because the rears weren't as thicker as the fronts were as compared to the regular S4 one-piece rotor. So I think just by the look of it, by the gap of this, I'm pretty sure I don't need to compress it, but I'm going to go ahead and give it a try and make sure, because, again, with this parking brake kind of gave me a good safe reassurance that probably these do not have to be compressed. But yeah, so let's see what happens. All right, there it is. It is all said and done. So I didn't have to compress the brake pads. I just had to kind of snug it in just a little bit, but it fit just like a glove. And it looks like, like how I was saying before, the brake pads do meet up all the way up to the surface right here. So the surface for the rotor here is being utilized 100%, as compared to the other one where there's that small section right there along the inner part of the disc that wasn't being utilized, because you can tell because it had that little rust ring around the rotor. So now go ahead and put on the rear wheel, and then once that's said and done, I'll go ahead and do the exact same thing over on the passenger side. The rear two-piece rotors are now installed, and I'm really loving how they came out. Definitely looks more race car to me. So as promised, before I end the video, I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys the comparison video of the two-piece rotors as compared to the one-piece rotors. This is the comparison part of the video. So again, these ones are the front rotors. Here I got obviously the two-piece and the ones that were with the S4. So the 3 measurements I'm going to do is the length or the width, or however you, actually it'll be the length on both. The width of the actual rotor itself on this one and this one, and also the weight. See how much this is heavier than this, or vice versa, who knows. I guess you have to stay tuned to find out. So the first measurement, I'm going to do the length, since obviously my calipers aren't big enough to do the length. So when I measured it from the top right here to the bottom right here, it's about 13.5 inches. And the same thing with this is also 13.5 inches. Again, just the best that I can do right there. And with that into millimeters, it's pretty much close to 350 millimeters, and that's our 345 millimeters for the front. So now I'm gonna go ahead and measure the part right here where the actual brake pad does its thing. So from this measurement here to here, the same thing with that here to see if it is the same. So here I have my calipers, no pun intended. So here, so it's about 65, pretty much 66 millimeters. The same thing with the regular rotors. It's also about, again, 66 millimeters. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the width. So just by even looking at it, look how girthy that is compared to this one. When doing the side-by-side comparison when it comes to the thickness of the rotor, you can definitely see the huge difference with the two-piece as compared to just the regular one-piece rotor. So the thickness of the two-piece rotor is about 34.13 millimeters thick. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same with the one-piece rotor and see the difference in thickness. So yeah, so it's about 30.19 millimeters is the thickness for the one-piece rotor. Now, the moment of truth. Is this thicker two-piece rotor heavier than the one-piece rotor, or is it vice versa? So now here I just have a regular bath scale. So I'm gonna go ahead and place the stock, the one-piece first, and see how much that weighs, and then we'll see if this is actually lighter. So the one-piece rotor is 25.6 pounds. I don't think that the video is actually capturing that very well because of all the the frequency, or whatever the correct term with the lighting and the LCD and the frame rate of the camera. All right, so this is the moment of truth. Now you're gonna do it with the two-piece rotor. Is it gonna be less? We'll see and find out. Look at that, 19.8 pounds. Now again, I'll remove it, let it go back to 0 again, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do a double take. Yep, 19.8 pounds is the two-piece rotor. After weighing both the rotors, that is a 5.8 pound difference, and that's huge. I'm gonna go into the thickness. I'm gonna talk a little bit brief into the thickness as to why I believe thickness is better than this, and it's going to be the same thing with the rear rotors as well. So the reason why they're thicker is because there's better airflow through these channels right here as compared to a thinner. So when there's more airflow, there's a lot better cooling capacity than on this than with that. And another thing, again, I don't have the science or whatever to prove this right, but because this is thicker and this is thinner, the brake pads, so pretend my index, the tips of my fingers are the brake pads. So with the thicker one, when I have to press in the brakes, like it barely has to move to fully compress this. As with the thinner one, say I do press, and it has to do a little bit more moving to accommodate. So when there's more moving, so behind my brake pads, you got the brake pistons that are pushed by the hydraulic, the brake fluid to compress onto the brake pads. So with that being said, with the thicker brake pads, if there's barely, movement with the brake pads, that means there's less volume of the brake fluid liquid inside the brake lines as to compare to this. So remember, with a thickness, say my brake pads have to stop to right here. With the thinner ones, now it has to be compressed a little bit, so that means there's more brake line fluid in the brake lines. So with more fluid, that means there's just more. It's just slightly faster reaction with this. There's more stopping power with this as compared to this because there's not enough. There's less fluid in the lines with this as compared to that. I hope that makes sense. I hope hopefully when I'm editing this video, this makes sense, and I'm not like what was I just talking about? So now that I got the fronts out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and do the same exact thing comparison with the rears. Now I am comparing the rear rotors. So here's the 2-piece, obviously, and then the 1-piece right here. So when it comes to the length across, when I measured it, it's pretty much close to about 13 inches for both. And that should be the equivalent of 330 millimeters across. Now I'm gonna go ahead and measure the width of the actual rotor itself. So it's actually gonna be slightly different. So for the 2-piece, it's about 49 millimeters across. And if you do the same, 49, you will see about right here, 49, you can see that there's more rotor surface, if you want to say, on the 1-piece as compared to the 2-piece. But if you look at the little kind of like the rust ring here, the brake pads only go to like about right here. So technically this is actually be nice and flush with the brake pads up to against to the very utilize the whole disc, as compared here it didn't really utilize this little portion right here. But just for the sakes of it, the whole width of this is looks like it's about 56.09 millimeters. So now I'm gonna go ahead and look at the width or the thickness of the rotors. So the thickness of the 2-piece looks like it's about 22.14 oops, a little moving right there, 22.28 millimeters. And then the thickness for the 1-piece looks like it is 22.01 millimeters. So when it comes to like the thickness comparison as compared to the front, so the fronts are way more girthier than the 1-piece. And when it comes to the rears, again, this is still slightly thicker than this, but I mean, it's just very so slightly. But again, if you're aware with the brakes, the front brakes are the ones that do most of the work and not so much the rears. Now here's the moment we really want to know. We just got done talking about the boring stuff. Now we want to see the fun stuff. So now this is the 1-piece rotor. Let's see how much this thing weighs. So that is 17 pounds right there. The rear rotors are 17 pounds. Again, this is the B6 S4 rear rotor, which is the 330. This is not the same as the B6 S4 stock rotors, because the B6 or B7 stock rotors are actually smaller than this. So if you do have those rotors, they'll be less than the 17 pounds. Because again, that was 17 pounds. Now, let's see this. This is the one that we really want to know. Is this lighter than the 1-piece? Look at that, 14.4 pounds. So with the weight difference, that's a 2.6 weight difference, that this is lighter than that. But here are the rears. I'm really loving how they came out. It's definitely gives it a really cool race car feeling. And then also the fronts as well. I'm very excited how they came out. And again, the weight savings, when it comes to rotational mass, is going to be pretty huge again. Right now I can't do the math in my head, but I will put the math right here. The total with all 4 of the 2-piece rotors installed, how much as compared to just the 1-piece rotors. So I think that'll be the end of this video. Hopefully this video was educational and it served its purpose, and hope you guys have a good one. Thanks for watching.